Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter to be the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you, Tom.
Sir, can you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Dale R. Tomei, Thomee.
Dr. Tomei, what do you do for a living?
I practice internal medicine here in Ashland. I'm also the county coroner.
Okay, so let's take those two things. First, the internal medicine part. You are a board-certified physician, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And what kind of training did you receive in education in order to qualify you to be a board-certified physician?
Residency and internship of 3 years in internal medicine. Then I passed the qualifying exams for board certification.
So you've got an undergraduate degree, is that correct?
Undergraduate degree, 4 years of medical school, 3 years of internship and residency.
Okay, and then after that, you're board certified, and you are currently board certified, is that correct?
I am, yes.
In what area of medicine?
Internal medicine.
Okay. And you are the elected county coroner for Ashland County, is that correct?
Yes.
How long have you been the elected coroner?
8 years.
Okay. Now, Dr. Tomei, in Ashland County, the autopsies that need to be performed, are those contracted with another organization?
Yes, they are. We contract out with Cuyahoga County medical examiners.
Okay, so there's a written contract that says that the Cuyahoga County medical examiner does autopsies that need to be performed from cases here in Ashland County, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
So what happens? What's the procedure after an autopsy is completed? Do you receive a report?
Well, yes, we receive a written report. There's verbal communication throughout the pre-autopsy. We send a communication to the Cuyahoga County medical examiners that they'll be receiving a case, the information related to that case. Then the day of autopsy, I usually get a call, or we'll call up to the examiner's office. Then a formal written report will come in about 8 to 12 weeks.
Okay, so there's communication back and forth between your office and between the Cuyahoga County medical examiner about these things?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to show defense counsel State's Exhibit 372. Dr. Tomei, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 372.
Thank
What is
you.
that?
That's my current curriculum vitae.
That's got a summary of your education and your experience, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And is that a true and accurate copy of your CV?
Yes, it is.
And do you keep that in the ordinary course of business at the coroner's office so you can have it for an occasion like this?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, Dr. Tomei, I'm going to bring to your attention two individuals, Elizabeth Griffith and Stacy Hicks, aka Stacy Stanley. To your knowledge, were autopsies on those two individuals performed at the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's office?
Yes, they were.
And was that pursuant to this contract that you mentioned earlier?
Yes, it was.
All right. And did you receive a report from the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's office on each of these two women?
Yes, we received an individual report on each said individual.
Okay. Now, Dr. Tomei, when you receive something like that, a report of autopsy indicating a cause of death, what do you do with that?
We use that to fill out a final death certificate for the deceased.
Okay. And is that one of the requirements for the county coroner to do that paperwork?
Yes, the requirements for the county coroner for assigned death cases are accidental, homicide, and unexplained or unnatural, or even now unattended deaths. Some patients don't have regular doctors. So we are assigned those cases, yes.
Okay. And do you make those determinations then and file paperwork according to that determination based on the information that you receive from the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's office?
Yes.
Okay. For the record, I'm showing defense counsel State's Exhibit 373 and 374. Dr. Tomei, I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 373. Can you explain to the jury what that is, please?
What he handed me was Elizabeth Griffith's death certificate, along with an amended, or the first one's written out as pending investigation, And then the updated or appended version is after the autopsy findings are in.
Okay. And after the autopsy findings were in and the second sheet was filled out,
Correct.
and do you list the immediate cause of death?
The immediate cause of death was cardiorespiratory arrest.
And was that due to something?
It was due to cervical compression.
Okay. And the cervical compression part, did that come from the autopsy report by Dr. Barr?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And so when someone's oxygen is cut off to the brain, for example, and the brain no longer functions, is that when we get cardiorespiratory arrest?
Correct. Once the brain is starved of oxygen, the body ceases to function. And that takes about, we think brain death occurs 4 minutes without oxygen. So when the blood flow is interrupted for whatever reason, the heart stops.
Dr. Tomei, that is a certified record, but does that appear to be a true and accurate copy of the record?
Yes, yes it is.
Certificate of death for Elizabeth Griffith?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you Stacy Exhibit 374. This is another certified record. Doctor, what is that record?
This is Stacy Hicks or Stacy Stanley's death certificate.
Okay, and the same question on, you've got 2 pages. One, that first page, did that indicate pending, the autopsy result?
That is correct, yes.
And so the second page then has the information concerning the cause of death, is that right?
That is correct as well.
And same question from Elizabeth Griffith, was that, well, first of all, what is listed there? as
The cause of death was cardiorespiratory arrest due to cervical compression.
Okay, and so the same question, that cervical compression component came from Dr. Barr's report from the autopsy. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you relied on that information in filling out this document, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I've done it for-
Cross-examine.
No questions, Judge, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tomei. You're excused.
And you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter to be the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Could you tell us your name, please?
Beth Jackenheimer,
And spell your last name, please?
Jackenheimer,
And how are you employed?
through the Ashland County Coroner's Office.
And what do you do for the Ashland County Coroner's Office?
I'm an investigator.
And what sorts of things does an investigator do?
We go to a scene and we'll do a little bit of a body exam, depending if there's an autopsy or not, take photographs. And in this case, we place them in the bag, sent them up for autopsy, write a report.
Okay. And do you have to have any specialized training or education to hold your position?
Yes.
What is that?
I have a degree in crime scene investigation, and I have follow-up training through the Ohio State Coroners Association conferences and also a training up at Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office.
Okay, and what does that training consist of?
Case studies that you're in on what is practical to do at a scene. We did some mock scenes that were graded on.
And how long have you done that?
I've been at the coroner's office for almost 6 years.
And are you the only investigator?
No, there's one other investigator,
And are you both part-time, full-time?
full-time.
Okay. And who is the county coroner?
Dr. Dale Tomei.
Now, did you get called to a scene in the city of Ashland, September 13th, 2016?
Yes,
Where did you go?
to 363 Covert Court.
And what was your understanding as to why you had to go there?
That there were missing ladies that were found in that house.
Okay. And when you got to that scene, what'd you do?
I waited outside until the fire department took down a wall and bagged Griffith upstairs. After that, I was cleared to go into the house. I did one walkthrough, took photographs of the upstairs and the downstairs, and then myself and BCI bagged the decedent downstairs, and we
Okay.
removed her from the home.
Now, when you say bag the decedent, what do you mean?
Placed her into a body bag.
And you did this, or both bodies were placed into a body bag?
Yes, separate ones.
Okay. And where did they go?
We use a livery service called Buckeye, and they transport the bodies up to Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office for autopsy.
Okay, and is that pursuant to some sort of contract with Buckeye Livery?
Yes, we have a contract with both Buckeye Livery and with Cuyahoga County.
All right. And that answers the next question maybe as to why they went to Cuyahoga County.
Yes, contracted services.
Okay. Does Ashland County, the Ashland County Coroner's Office equipped to conduct a full forensic autopsy?
No.
All right. And is that what Cuyahoga County does then?
Yes.
At some point, did you travel, reference this case to the coroner's office?
Yes, I did.
Did you go there by yourself or with somebody?
I was with two from the Ashland Police Department.
Okay. Do you remember who?
I actually went up to Cleveland twice. The one time I did go solo for the autopsies, and then I went up later with Captain Lay and Sergeant Detective Alting.
Okay. So you actually go up and attend the autopsies?
This one, Dr. Tomei requested I went up.
Okay. So you did that?
Yes,
As to both victims in this case?
yes,
And do you just stand by and observe?
I did.
Okay. What happened when you traveled with the Ashland Police Department?
We went up to collect what evidence was removed from the ladies at their time of autopsy, and it was signed over to myself and then immediately signed over to the police department.
Okay. I'm going to show you what we marked as State's Exhibit 275. I don't know, maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't. You ever seen this form?
Yes,
What's it appear to be?
evidence log.
Okay. For what sort of evidence?
These are the samples that were removed from the ladies. It includes bone fragments and stuff like that that was used for DNA, and also their clothing.
Okay. And then that form, does that form document your taking custody of those items?
Yes,
And who'd you get them from?
I received them from Cuyahoga County Lab.
Okay, and what'd you do with them?
Immediately transferred them over to the police department, which was Captain Lay.
Okay, and I take it you were riding in the same car,
Yes,
so that was relatively simple to do.
yes.
And then where did you go?
The three of us then went to BCI.
Okay. And what happened to the evidence at that time?
I believe the police department turned it into BCI.
Okay. But at that point in the investigation, you're just riding along?
Correct.
Okay. And what day did all of that occur?
September 30th,
Okay, 2016.
2016.
Thank you, ma'am. Nothing further.
Cross.
No questions, Judge, thank you.
Thank you. You're excused.
Thank you.
Christine. Oh, Christine Hammond.
Is this your last scheduled witness for the day?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Dan, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter to be the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Christine Hammett, Hammett.
Ms. Hammett, how are you employed?
I am employed by the Ohio Attorney General's Office, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, commonly referred to as BCI.
What do you do for BCI?
At BCI, I am a forensic scientist in the biology and DNA section. As a forensic scientist in this section, I examine items of evidence for body fluids, such as semen and blood. I collect samples to send on for DNA analysis. I write reports of my findings and testify in court as needed.
Have you received any education or training to qualify you for your position at BCI?
Yes, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Biology and a Bachelor's of Science in Medical Technology from Ohio Northern University. I have also completed in-house training at BCI in the biology DNA section, where I have received lectures, laboratory work, mock cases, mock trials, and supervised casework.
Okay. Show defense counsel Stacy Exhibit 375.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hammett, I'm going to hand you Stacy Exhibit 375. Could you tell me if you recognize that document, please?
Yes, this is a statement of my qualifications, my education, professional experience, and job training.
And is that the sort of document that is kept at BCI?
Yes, it is.
Is that a true and accurate copy?
Yes, it appears to be so.
Okay, and kept in the ordinary course of business at BCI?
That is correct.
Typically, those are actually attached to the reports that you prepare. So for each report, they can see, here's what Ms. Hammett or whatever scientist looked at this evidence, here are their qualifications. Is that right?
That is true.
Okay. So you kind of told us generally what you do at BCI, but if a physical item comes into BCI, it's been taken into evidence by the police, and they bring it over to Richfield for an examination, what is your role in examining that evidence, like a physical item?
Yes, the evidence is taken in by our receiving personnel and placed into a secure main vault. At that time, the case is assigned to myself. I will go find the evidence in that secure vault, take it into my custody, and begin my examination of the evidence. Typically, the evidence has come in with, each item is labeled out, and the agency has indicated what kind of analysis might be done on these pieces of evidence. So I take each item individually. All items are worked separately. All of my laboratory equipment and laboratory surfaces are cleaned in between each item. I open the item of evidence and begin my analysis based on what I'm looking for and what samples I need to take from this piece of evidence.
So when they first come in, they're stored securely, right?
That is correct.
Why?
Only forensic scientists Management and evidence receiving personnel will have access to the secure main vault. It is to keep the integrity of the evidence intact.
And evidence that you receive in this manner would typically, if not every time, be sealed. Is that correct?
Yes, for a piece of evidence to be accepted in by our personnel, it needs to be properly sealed. All edges covered in tape and the seal signed.
Okay. And again, you want to make sure that the item that's in there, its integrity is maintained. Is that the reason?
That is correct.
Okay. You indicated that you clean in between doing examinations. So you get one piece of evidence and you do your job on that, then you clean your station. Why do you do that?
We do not want anything from one piece of evidence to become involved in the next piece of evidence. So everything is meticulously cleaned with a 10% bleach solution in between. All of my surfaces are cleaned, and new pieces, if needed, of clean brown paper are used to protect the evidence and control anything that may fall off of the items of evidence during examination.
And Ms. Hammett, is that just how you prefer to do your job, or are there rules at BCI about how these things, not only is the evidence to be maintained, but also the workspace is to be cleaned to make sure that there aren't any cross-contamination problems?
Yes, this is the rule for BCI. This is how we all work our evidence.
Okay. So if you get a physical piece of evidence, there are, in some instances, multiple people who are going to provide some analysis. Is that fair to say? Like if you're looking to see if there's DNA on there and to compare that to another standard, what's your role in that process?
My role is the initial examination of the evidence. I'm the first person to open the evidence, examine it. I will collect samples to be forwarded for DNA analysis. I do not do the DNA analysis, but I collect the samples that provide the DNA profiles.
How do you collect samples?
It depends on the item of evidence I am looking at. For instance, if I was looking to see who may have handled a pencil, I will take that pencil and with it looks like a Q-tip, it's a swab, a clean swab, place water or another substance onto that swab and swab the surface that I'm interested in. I will then dry completely that swab and place it into a tube. This tube then moves on to the next portion of DNA analysis, where these cells are then used to produce a profile.
Okay, so the first thing you do is you swab it to see if you can collect DNA from that physical object. Is that correct?
That was an example of if I was just looking for someone who touched something. If there are body fluids present, I will perform testing and then collect those samples.
Okay, let's stay with that example just for a minute. We're going to get into some specifics in just a moment, but just so I understand exactly what you're doing. You said you're not the one who then goes on to compare the DNA, right?
That is correct.
You're collecting the sample, but as part of your training, you need to know the significance of these things. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What DNA is and why we want to find out if someone's DNA is present on an object. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Can you just tell us then, what is DNA?
I am not a DNA expert. However, I do know that DNA is a long thread-like molecule that's found in almost every cell of our bodies. It makes us who we are, and it can be used, to compare to a known DNA.
So, Ms. Hammett, based on your training and your experience, do people sometimes, you gave the pencil example, if a person touches a physical object like a pen or a pencil, do they sometimes leave some of their DNA on that object?
Yes, depending on how many cells a person leaves behind, you may or may not be able to pick up a certain person on said object.
Okay, so every time somebody touches something like this pen that I'm holding, you can't say, sitting there, Mr. McNamara left DNA on this pen. Is that fair to say?
That is fair.
Okay. So you swab to try and collect if there is DNA present on this object in this hypothetical we're talking about. Then a profile's generated, is that what you said?
Yes, the swab is dried and placed into a tube for the next portion of DNA analysis.
Are you the person who does that next portion of DNA analysis to develop a profile, or is that somebody else?
I did not in this case. However, I am also trained to do the next portion.
Well, how does it work?
cells are on whatever substrate may be in the tube. So for instance, the swab. We take those cells and open them up and release that thread-like piece of DNA that is within those cells. And we wash them and make them nice and clean and pure, and then they get passed on to the next, which I'm not involved in, step in the DNA analysis.
How do you do that portion, though, stretching out the strand and washing it?
The cell is opened, and we do a couple different procedures to wash and purify the DNA. It is then made into a nice clean sample that is passed on to generate a profile.
We're talking about something very, very small. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Okay, so you're not like, you don't have a wash rag washing this thing out. You're using a microscope and some chemicals?
We're using a pipette, if you have ever seen one. They are something that you hold in your hand, and it is able to bring up very, very tiny amounts of liquid. It can also bring up large amounts of liquid. However, in this instance, for the most part, very small amounts of liquid. So if you were to have, say like a little shot glass, if I dropped my amount of liquid for some of these processes into it, you would barely see a little drop in the bottom of it. So they're very small amounts.
And so after that process then, a profile is generated. Is that correct?
My sample is passed on to the next portion, which I am not trained in, and at that point, they're able to generate a profile from the DNA that may be in those tubes.
Okay. And Ms. Feldenkrais, in this case, is subpoenaed to testify, and she'll be here tomorrow, but if you know, is that profile represented in a graph form?
Yes, it is in a visual form with peaks and stuff on it, and she will be able to speak to that tomorrow.
Right. So I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit, Judicial Defense Counsel 376. Ms. Hammond, this is State's Exhibit 376. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes, this is a copy of my report.
Okay. So in this particular case, you were assigned to examine and process some pieces of evidence. Is that fair to say?
Yes, this is true.
And who was the BCI agent who was assigned to this case?
George Staley was the BCI agent.
Okay. And is Agent Staley, is he called Ed?
That is correct.
Okay. Goes by his middle name?
Yes, he does.
Okay. And who supplied this evidence? Who dropped, according to your record there, who dropped this evidence off at BCI?
It appears that Ashland Police Department Detective Kim Mager is the investigative officer. I'm not exactly sure who the submitting officer was. May I refer to my notes?
Does it say on that exhibit submitted on September 30, 2016, right above?
Yes, I apologize. Captain David Lay was the submitting officer.
Okay. So there are several items listed, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. The exhibit that I just showed you, what number is that?
376.
376. Is that a true and accurate copy of your report in this case?
Yes, it appears to be.
And kept in the ordinary course of business at BCI?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 257. Take a minute to look at that and see if you recognize that.
Yes, I do recognize this item.
What is that?
This is BCI item number 1, and I can identify this by our BCI barcode. Every piece of evidence that comes in is given its own unique barcode. This will contain the BCI case number and item number on it. Also, I have indicated myself opening it and the case number and item number next to the BCI sticker.
Now, Ms. Hammett, you described that as BCI item number 1. Is that how it's listed on your report? You've got 17 items listed?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, that's not the same as obviously the evidence sticker that's on there. Is that correct? It's got a different number for...
The state's exhibit?
Yeah.
That is correct.
And are you aware whether or not Agent Staley, as he's collecting these items, had numbered, actually he didn't even collect that one, but of the items that are collected by Agent Staley, they have different BCI numbers. Is that correct?
I don't have them in front of me, but that is sometimes how things come from the agents to BCI.
But for your purposes, in keeping track of what you're analyzing, you've got kind of new numbers to keep track of these things. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
So that item is number 1 on your report, State's
Yes.
Exhibit 257.
Yes, it is.
You said there was an indicator on there that you can open that?
Yes.
Where's that?
Next to the sticker, I have indicated the case number, the item number, my initials, and dates that it was opened.
When you received this item, State's Exhibit 257, was it sealed?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And if it hadn't been, you said it's not coming in if it hadn't been, but even if it had been broken open somehow, would you have noted that in your report?
I would have noted it, contacted a supervisor and the department.
Okay. Not the case here, this was sealed.
That was sealed, yes.
Until you opened it to observe the contents and then do your work. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So what did you do with State's Exhibit 257?
Upon opening this item number 1, it is a rape kit belonging to Lorinda M. Spillick. Within it, I identified different items. Typically, when a rape kit is collected, the nurse there's envelopes inside of that kit, and it directs her which samples to collect. And typically, the rape kit will contain an envelope with vaginal samples, which will have swabs from the vaginal orifice and a slide made from those swabs. The anal samples will also be swabs from the anal orifice and a slide made from those swabs. Perianal samples are the same, swabs from the perianal area and a slide prepared from that by the nurse. Oral samples will contain swabs from the oral orifice and a slide prepared from those swabs. Also within the kit was a pair of underwear, a DNA standard from the patient that the kit was collected, which is typically a swab that is run along the gum line, the cheek, interior cheek area. There is a pubic hair standard, a pubic hair combing, fingernail scrapings, a head hair standard, and also skin swabs from the neck, inner thighs, and pubic area.
A lot of different things collected in that State's Exhibit 257.
Yes,
You didn't need to use all that for what you were doing, though. Is that correct?
that is correct.
What did you do?
Within this item, being that the victim had not had consensual sex and there was only one suspect listed, I was able to identify the most intimate sample that contained evidence that may be good to generate a DNA profile from. In this instance, I looked at the vaginal samples and I did identify semen, and the swabs were also stained slightly red-brown, which is my first indication as a visual examination for blood testing. So when I visualize that red-brown stain, I will then test for a component of blood. It's a preliminary test. It just shows that this may be a good sample to send forward, and that was also positive.
How did you determine that semen was present?
The first test that I do with the swabs is I place them on a clean, moistened piece of paper and press them down and transfer a little bit of whatever is on the swabs onto that paper. I then place a chemical on the paper, and if a purple color change is present, it indicates that a component of semen is present. At that point, I will then look at the microscope slide that has been prepared by the nurse underneath the microscope. The cells on the slide are stained. And if sperm is present, the head of the sperm will be a reddish pink, and if there are tails present on the sperm, they will be green. In this instance, I was able to identify the sperm cells, and that gave me the finding of semen identified.
So first you got that color change, and then you actually looked and saw sperm.
That is correct.
Okay. Did you collect a sample from that could be then tested for DNA?
Yes. Usually there are 4 swabs collected. However many swabs that are collected, a portion of each of those gets placed into the tube that I was speaking of earlier, and it goes on to the next process.
So that a profile can be obtained for that DNA. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. There was also, you mentioned the DNA standard for Lori Svilik in that rape kit.
Yes,
What
that
did
is
you do with
correct.
that?
In that instance, there's usually 1 swab that they've taken from the interior cheek area. A portion of that swab will be placed into a tube and sent forward for DNA analysis.
For the same thing, so that a profile can be generated and then compared to other profiles. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And that was done in this case.
Yes, it was.
So those were the 2 things that were done in the State's Exhibit 357. Is that correct? Excuse
That
me,
is correct.
257. Item number 2 on your report, what is that?
Item number 2 was a DNA standard from Shawn Grate.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 262. Take a look at that and tell us if you recognize what that is, please.
Yes, this is BCI item number 2. Also the same instance, this is our BCI barcode. It has item 2 and the same BCI case number. And it is the known standard from Shawn Grate.
What, if anything, did you do with that?
This was opened and a sample was taken from the standard and sent forward for DNA analysis.
Okay. Same thing we were talking about with these other things. Is that right?
That is correct.
Was that item sealed when you received it?
Yes, it was.
It appeared to be in substantially the same condition that it was when you received it.
Yes, it appears so.
State's Exhibit 257, the rape kit, did that appear to be in substantially the same condition as when you received it at BCI?
Yes, it did.
Now, there are 17 total items that you performed some work on in this case. Is that correct? 17 listed things?
16, I believe. Item number 3 was not assigned to myself.
I gotcha. So 1 and 2 and then 4 through 17.
That is correct.
Okay. What was item 4?
Item 4 was a brown paper bag containing a sexual device recovered from 363 Covert Court, marked item number 44.
Now, Ms. Hammett, as part of your analysis in this case, did you look at more than one sexual device?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what did you do kind of generally with these devices when you received them?
Upon opening, I conducted my examination and found each of them to be layers of items on top of each other. So starting from the exterior to the interior, I took a swab to collect any possible DNA on each layer. So then I would package them so they're not put back together. They do not look like they did at the time of my examination. There were layers of different types of items, and those are all contained in my notes, what each layer was and how each layer was swabbed.
So item 4, which BCI item was that identified as? I know you've got, it's item 4 on your report, but do you have on there what item it would have been collected as at the scene?
At the scene, it would appear to be that Agent Staley marked it as item number 44.
Okay.
It then comes into BCI and becomes BCI item number 4.
All right. So for that item, did you take it apart?
Yes, I
As you
did.
previously indicated, and what was that made of?
I would need to refer to my notes. May I?
If you,
Does it indicate on your report right here what the items were underneath?
Yes, there may be multiple of each of those. If you need specifics, I can go into that, but if not, I can refer.
Yeah, let's talk generalities.
Okay.
Just what these things are made of. So item number 4, what was that made of?
Item number 4 contained condoms, paper, a candle, and a ball.
Okay. And you collected samples from that?
Yes, I did.
Item number 5, what was that?
That contained a condom, socks, and balls.
Was that a sexual device as well?
Yes.
Where was that taken from, according to your report?
363 Covert Court, marked as item number 56.
And you said a condom, socks, and balls.
Correct.
Okay, item 6,
Item 6 contained a wooden stick, condoms, sock, duct tape, and a towel.
and what was that?
That was BCI item number 6, marked as item 12 from 363 Covert Court.
Okay, another sexual device, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 122. Now, aside from being open, did you recognize what this item is here? We'll open it up in just a second.
Yes, this is BCI item number 6.
From your lab, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, the item that we just talked about.
Yes.
All right. You said that there was a wooden pole?
Yes.
All right. What analysis did you do on this?
Upon opening it, I examined it for stains. There were no stains, so then I proceeded to swab each layer as I peeled them away.
And so you took this item apart, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. I'm gonna open it up here. Inside of State's Exhibit 122, there's a wooden stick and then bags of individual items. Can you see those from where you're at?
Yes.
Okay, is that your handwriting on those bags?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So when you took this item apart, did you separately bag the individual pieces?
Yes, I packaged them as I swabbed them for each layer. So it will say which layer was swabbed in each envelope or brown paper wrapping.
Okay. So even though you took apart this item so you could swab the layers, you made sure to keep those things separately and separately sealed inside those little bags. Is that right?
Yes, I did that in case anything would need to be gone back to in the future. I knew exactly what I had done and which layer each thing contained.
You keep the integrity of the evidence from when it enters BCI's doors until it leaves your facility. Is that correct?
Yes, after I'm done with my analysis, I will reseal it. It will go back into the secure vault until DNA analysis is done and the department comes to pick up their evidence.
Now, the writing here next to the sticker, is that your handwriting?
That is my handwriting.
Okay. So when you received this item, was it sealed?
Yes, it was.
And you opened it up to take it apart and do swabs, is that right?
That is correct.
And what we looked at inside, is that substantially the same condition it was when it left your custody at BCI?
Yes, it appears to be so.
So we saw the wooden stick. What else made up that item before you took it apart?
There were condoms, sock, duct tape, and a towel.
And what did you collect samples from? For this, I'd like you to be specific.
I would need to refer to my notes.
Okay. Would that help you to refresh your recollection as to specifically what items were swabbed to see if a DNA a profile could be generated from that?
Yes, it would.
Okay. Take a moment, please, to refer to your report, then I'll ask you the question again as to, for your lab number 6, which of those items were swapped for DNA?
BCI item number 6. I took a swab of the handle as item 6.1. So when I collect something from that main item, it becomes a 0.1, etc. I took one swab from the condom as 6.2.
Would that have been the condom on the outer layer of
Yes.
this device?
I swabbed from the exterior to the interior layers. There was difficulty removing layer 1 from layer 2. There was things stuck, the condoms were stuck to each other, so the next item that I swabbed was a condom as 6.3.
So, Ms. Hammond, were the first 3 layers that you've described all condoms?
No, the first swab was of the handle.
Not the swab, the layers that you're describing?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The first layer, the most exterior, was a condom. The next layer was also a condom.
That was the one that was stuck to the first layer?
Correct.
Okay. You did get a swab then from the 3rd layer, which was also a condom?
The 3rd layer was a sock, which was BCI item 6.4.
Okay, I might have misunderstood. There's a condom on the exterior of this device.
That is correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you said that you couldn't separate that top condom from the condom underneath it.
I had difficulty and there was some tearing,
Okay.
but I did my best to separate them and then swab that next layer of condom.
Meaning the second condom.
Correct.
Gotcha. So 2 layers of condoms and then there was a sock.
Correct.
Okay.
So the swab of the sock, I have then made item 6.4. The next swab that I took was from duct tape that was wrapped around that sock. That becomes 6.5. The next layer underneath the sock was a towel. That is 6.6. And then underneath of all of the layers, now underneath the towel was the stick, the covered end of the stick, and I swabbed that, and that is BCI 6.7.
And then that information went on as you've previously described so that a profile could be made, if possible, from any DNA that might or might not be present on those swabs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Item 7, what was that?
Item 7 was a white box containing a sexual device recovered from 363 Covert Court, marked item number 57.
And did you do the same thing you've described previously? You took it apart and you took swabs?
That is correct.
What was that item made of?
There was a wooden pole, socks, and duct tape.
Item 8, what was that?
A sexual device recovered from 363 Covert Court, marked item number 58.
And what did you do with that item?
There was a wooden stick, condoms, and socks. I noted on the exterior layer that there was a red-brown stain. I then tested it with my preliminary color change test for a component of blood. It was positive. That portion, I believe, was swabbed separately from the remainder of that first layer.
Okay. So item 8, the exterior that tested presumptive positive for blood.
That is correct.
Item 9, what was that?
Sexual device recovered from 363 Covert Court, marked item number 62. It contained condoms, pantyhose, paper towel, and candle. Also, trace debris from the item was collected and placed separately and not examined.
Okay. Item 10, what was that?
A sexual device recovered from 363 Covert Court, marked item number 63. This contained condoms, shirt, candle, and aluminum foil. In this item, there was also trace debris that was collected and placed separately within item 10 and not examined.
Item 11, that was an item that BCI received of some biological material from Stacy Hicks. Is that correct?
That is correct. It was a bone and toenails from Stacy Hicks.
And item 12 were samples, swabs or orifice samples from Stacy Hicks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you collected samples of those. Is that correct?
I did testing to see if semen was present on the vaginal, rectal, and oral swabs. No semen was identified. The oral swabs were then used as a DNA standard to send forward for comparisons. And there were swabs from underneath the right and left fingernails separately. Portions of those were collected and sent forward for DNA analysis.
Similarly, with item 17 for Elizabeth Griffith, there was an oral swab that was collected.
That is correct.
Was that for the same purpose, to get a DNA standard to be able to compare against some of these other things?
That is correct.
Okay, and was that done in this case?
Yes.
All right. And 13 through 16 are other, just kind of generally, pieces of biological evidence. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Ms. Hammond, I'm going to hand yours been marked for identification purposes as State Exhibit 275. There's a top sheet. This has already been identified from the Ashland Police Division. If you flip over to the next sheet, though, looks like some BCI paperwork. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes, this is our laboratory evidence submission form. So once the agency comes in, the case is logged into our computer system, all the items are logged in. The agency will indicate what kind of testing they would like on the evidence. That all shows up on this form, as well as the date of the offense, names of subjects and victims, locations, and the agency.
And these were the items that were submitted, or some of the items that were submitted in this case, is that correct?
Yes, this appears to be the initial submission for this case.
Okay. And is the submission sheet that you just described to us, is that kept in the ordinary course of business at BCI?
Yes, it is.
And so we've got on here item 1, rape kit. It's the same corresponding number on your report.
Yes.
Does that appear to be a true and accurate copy of the BCI submission sheet? The
Yes.
items that we described?
It appears to be, yes.
So, Ms. Hammond, is it fair to say you didn't reach any conclusions as to these things? You are part of the scientific process here in getting things that can develop DNA profiles that can be analyzed later. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I collected the samples that were forwarded on for DNA analysis.
Thank you.
Cross-examine, Mr. Whitney.
No questions, Judge, thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. You're excused.
Thank you.
It's 2:27 on the courtroom clock. Mr. Tennell, you indicated that earlier that that was the state's last witness for today.
Correct, Your Honor.
What time would you have a witness available tomorrow?
Your Honor, if we could approach.
Sure. forgot to turn my mic back on. But in any event, we are going to excuse you until 10:30 tomorrow morning. Since we're going to probably want to start right at 10:30, try to be here no later than 10:20 in the jury room. And we'll try to get started promptly at 10:30. Anything further before we dismiss the jury, gentlemen, for the day? Okay, thank you, jurors. You are excused until 10:30 tomorrow morning, 10:33, or excuse me, 2:33, and we will have discussions with counsel. Record should reflect at 2:34, the jury has left the courtroom. Counsel and defendant are still present. Anything else we need to discuss, gentlemen, even if it's up here at the bench?
Potentially, Your Honor, I suppose, the bench or the chambers.
Well, I just as soon discuss it up here at the bench as opposed. Well, I would rather that it be on the record.
I think
I want everything to be on the record to the extent, just because we don't think it needs to be on the record doesn't mean we should make a record.
We should broach it.
Yeah.